Let me know, guys. Do you feel like we're in a different era from women's basketball? Um, and the reason why I asked that is because if you saw yesterday, when Caitlin Clark broke the record, it was everywhere. It was Pat McAfee talked about it on his show. ESPN had it plastered all over their social. They brought, even though the game was not on ESPN, they brought Holly Rowe down to watch the game, and she let everybody know that that Caitlin Clark gave her a hug. It was everywhere. Bleacher Report had it all on their social. Basically, any sporting outlet, any sporting media outlet, talked about Caitlin Clark, and even NPR was talking about Caitlin Clark and talking about women's basketball. And they don't really talk about women's sports like that, let alone women's basketball. And so that's my question to you guys. Are we seeing a different sort of like pickup when it comes to media for women's basketball this year? And are we set to really make this the best NCAA tournament ever before for women's basketball? Yes, last year was huge. But I feel like I'm seeing women's basketball everywhere. And yes, I do love women's basketball and I'm watching it a lot. But I feel like I'm seeing it in places where I normally wouldn't. So, for example, some of the major sports networks, they have sort of like a women's version of their thing. So, for example, Bleacher Report, they put a lot of stuff on Highlight Her when it's about females, right? When same thing for ESPN, they would put stuff on ESPNW. It wasn't deemed important enough to put on ESPN. It was on ESPNW. It was on all of the women specific platforms that these media institutions had. That stuff was put on there and celebrated, and they put it out, but it was sort of on a secondary tier. And I felt like not just Caitlin Clark hitting that record, but I feel like in general, I have seen so much of women's basketball highlighted in places that I really did not think I saw before. And maybe I'm just hyper aware of it or whatnot, but I would like to hear what you all have to say. I would love to hear what y'all have to say about that. Joe says, I think it's getting better, but still so far to go. Bear Down says, different era for sure because everyone's talking and not just on social media. Nina says, I think we're getting there, but I think when Caitlin Clark graduates, they will unfortunately die down a bit. Yeah, maybe the specific Caitlin Clark fans, but I really feel like it's not just Caitlin Clark. It's all the stuff. It's like LSU getting a lot of coverage. It's sort of USC getting coverage. It's South Carolina getting a lot of coverage. And yeah, so yes, Caitlin Clark is a huge driver of a lot of attention, but I don't think it'll just die off once she graduates or once she decides to leave Iowa. Connor says the game has grown a lot in the last year or so. I think people realized during last year's tournament how fun women's basketball is to watch. Yeah, I think that has something to do with it. Bear Down says ESPN invested in showing more March Madness for women. Yep, because they have the contract. Yeah, and because when you're looking at the men's March Madness, it's not going to be on ESPN, but ESPN will have the women's March Madness, and that for sure is incentive for them to cover it a lot more. But for the last like decade, they've had the women's March Madness, and I still feel like they upped their game in terms of like how they're covering it and sort of what they're talking about. Michaela says, we are for sure in a different era. I couldn't escape Caitlin Clark last night. Pam and Egg says there's more parity now. Ty says yes, thanks to Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, and NIL. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Jimmy agrees, said it 100% started with Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark. I think you're right about that. I think you're right. Nina, that is funny. That is funny, Nina. Nina says, my dad called me last night and said, you like basketball. Do you know about Kathleen Clark? Even dads that don't know nothing about women's basketball, they talking about Kathleen Clark. That's funny that he didn't even know her name, but he knew something happened with some lady with the last name Clark. That's pretty funny. Nina, I like, did you tell your dad, hey, yes, I do. Let's turn on the game and let's watch a women's basketball game and talk about it. It for sure isn't introductory. I think there's a lot of people who the last sort of several months or so they've been introduced to women's basketball in a way that they haven't before. Like I said, it was even on NPR. NPR was talking about, they were specifically talking about Caitlin, but the fact that you have NPR talking about women's basketball and it's not something bad, it's not, you know what I'm saying? Like I think it's, I think it shows growth. I think it shows a lot of growth in the women's game. RC says we need a couple of Caitlin Clarks. I love women's college basketball, but some of the crowd will follow her out, unfortunately. Yeah, some of them will, but the hope is that they'll be followed by new people as sort of that old crowd sort of leaves. Jimmy says that was the first women's hoops game I ever watched, and that got me into it. The NCAA tournament last year. That's awesome, Jimmy. That is awesome. Guys, in the comments, let me know. Was last year for the Final Four, was that your introduction to women's basketball? Let me know in the comments. Because I do think it did introduce a lot of people to women's basketball. And they were like, actually, this is pretty cool. They got some drama in it. These ladies can ball. Like, I think I like this, Yeah, so I will say I do think that last year's tournament really, really helped the game grow, for sure. Also, guys, while we are in here, if y'all can hit that like button, that would be fantastic. We got 159 people in the chat. If we can get to 100 likes, that would be phenomenal. Hitting the like button is not just like a random thing that people on YouTube ask you to do. We ask it because it helps more people find the channel. And specifically, it helps YouTube push this to more people while we are live, instead of folks sort of finding out about this after the fact. The more people like it, the more likely YouTube will, while we're on here, will show this for somebody else and be like, hey, are you interested in watching this? And hopefully they are, and then we'll, have more people join us. Frank says NBC, ABC, ESPN, Peacock, it was everywhere this year. Absolutely, Frank. It really was. It really was. And I don't remember this being on Peacock last year. Maybe it was, but I don't remember it. And it got me to subscribe to Peacock because I wasn't planning on subscribing. And I have what's it's a flex box for Xfinity. And when I turned on the box, the first thing I saw was Iowa versus Michigan. Do you want to watch the game? The first card. And for it shows a lot for Comcast to put that as the first thing someone saw when they turned on the box. And they're doing it because they know interest is there. I just think it's awesome. I just think it's really, 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 really awesome. Shout out to Michelle for the super chat. I appreciate you, Michelle. I really do appreciate y'all. Really, really do. Thank you so much for the super chat. Let's see what the rest what the rest of y'all got to say. Bear Down says LSU gets more hate than coverage. Bear Down, you may be right about that. You may be right about that. I would say LSU gets more drama coverage than anything else. Just because there's a lot of stuff happening. There's a lot of stuff happening with LSU, with Kateri Poole leaving the team, in a way that we still don't know what happened with Angel Reese, being out for several games, and still not really understanding what happened on that front. It's the question mark of when, like, what Kim Mulkey's going to do with Haley Van Lith at the point, and if she's going to have her have Laster Poa sort of be the number one point guard. I looked at a recent presser that she did, and she actually is giving no indication that she will do that. So update for you guys: Poa is not PG1. I thought she played well enough to sort of earn that spot, but it turns out doesn't look like that is the case. KA says, I think so many eyes are on Caitlin Clark. So that's the hype. But if you watch the women's game, then you know the freshmen are the creators of the new era. Yes. These freshmen, y'all, we're going to do a future live stream specifically about these freshmen because they're different. They're built different. You have Madison Booker at Texas. You got JuJu Watkins at Southern Cal. You got Mylasia Fulwiley at South Carolina. You got who else you got? You got Michaela Williams at LSU. You got Hannah Hidalgo at Notre Dame. Like, these freshmen are different. They're built different. DRZ says, amazing era right now. Personalities are rising. Talent has started the groundswell. Now sports media has to start shifting even further. DRZ, how would you recommend they continue to shift going forward? I would love to just hear your thoughts on that. Country says, I think as long as new stars are being developed, the popularity will continue. Yes, I agree. And with these new freshmen that are in, and with the players who are to come, Sarah Strong, the number one prospect coming in, we still don't know where she's going. But with players like that, it's just, the game is looking like it's in good hands. That's all I got to say. Bear Down says, throughout the social media era, I wish the media pushed more / hype on the game when Skylar Diggins-Smith, Brittany Griner, and Elena Delle Donne was in college. Yeah. I would agree with you. I would agree. But I think, social media, I think, has kind of forced the actual media to really, really get on the women's basketball game bandwagon, because there's just so many people talking about it. There's a lot of people talking about it. JB says, I absolutely love the growth and popularity of the game, but I feel it's long overdue. Facts. We've had all-time greats. I feel like so many missed out on appreciating. Yeah, I mean, that's correct. I mean, JB, you're right. But there's no time like the present. Yes, the players of old, like the Tamika Catchings and the Maya Moores, and even the Stewies. Yes, Stewie got a lot of recognition, but she did not get what Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese are getting in terms of as many people sort of saying her name. Yes, she won 4 championships in a row. Basically the most decorated women's college basketball player ever in terms of just sheer championships and sort of other awards won. And we didn't see people talking about Stewie like they talking about Caitlin and even Angel. We didn't see that. And it's just, it's long overdue, but I am for sure happy about it. I am very, very happy about it. RC says, Quita, that's why it's bitter people everywhere, because we lost in the championship game, and still Caitlin and Iowa are taking the women's basketball world by storm. I mean, yeah. I mean, people not gonna like it, like stuff. It sort of is what it is. It sort of is what it is. Oh, okay. So Frank says the Final Four was his introduction. That's awesome, Frank. That's awesome. Glad to have you on board. Frank, you have like, since I've been like doing this, it feels like you have like women's basketball super fan vibes. And I love it. And I think it's kind of cool that you just kind of started with the Final Four last year. Like that's pretty amazing, Frank. Shout out to all y'all newbies to women's basketball. Like this is, I love the fact that last year's Final Four kind of got you into it, and it's pretty awesome. Pretty awesome. Jimmy says, "Yep, I got tickets for me and my nephew to see LSU play at the end of the month." That's awesome. That is great. That is really, really great. Danielle says, "I was mad at ESPN for cutting into my South Carolina versus Tennessee game. They could have split screen. A lot of folks were mad." Yeah, but ESPN had a whole crew that it wasn't even their game; it was Peacock's game. But ESPN paid Peacock for the rights to cover it. They had Holly Rowe there, so you knew if they paying for it, they gonna make sure to milk it for all it got. So I get it. I get why that made people mad, but I also get why they did it because why send personnel down there if you're not gonna milk this for all it's worth. Nicholas says the Iowa versus South Carolina game was a real watershed moment for women's hoops overall. I could see that. I could absolutely see that. RC says, "I've been watching women's college basketball since 95. That's awesome. All right, since 95. And I've known about even before that. So yes, RC's telling us that he's been a fan for forever, basically. He's been a fan of women's basketball for forever, and that's awesome. That is great. Shakim says, "Q, love that you don't limit your coverage to one team. You are a true sports analyst. I can tell you so much about South Carolina sports, but I struggle to talk about women's college basketball as a whole." Well, Shakim, that's why I'm here, and that's I literally, before making this channel, all the stuff I'm telling y'all about, I would talk to my mom. I would talk her ear off. Cause she, the rest of my family, they watch women's basketball and they support, but they don't really know it like that. And I would talk her ear off, talking about the whole lowdown of games that happened, like who did what, and like all this stuff. And I knew I had to like start to talk to other people because I don't like none of my friends like women's basketball. Just my family. So, and even then, they're not into college women's basketball. They're not. Like I could talk to my mom about it, and she knows the bigger teams, but she doesn't like know sort of like nitty gritty. And so that's why I really, really do love this channel, because it gives me an opportunity to sort of talk about the game with people who like are really into it also, and not just talk about one team, because talking about one team is just kind of boring. Like I like, for all y'all who are big fans of one team, like shout out to y'all. That's great. But since I didn't go to a big school, I have zero allegiance to teams, and I just sort of like love the variety of watching different games every day, and just sort of seeing what happens, and closely paying attention to various teams. But thank you so much for that comment, Shakim. Nina, come on. Nina says, "I will never turn down the opportunity to insult Kim Mulkey." Why? What did she do to you? I'm just saying, what did she do to you? Nolan says, "Meanwhile, the high school kids coming up are so skilled." Facts. If you all are interested, let me know in the comments below. If you all are interested, we could do some sort of future edition of either a live or a produced video where I break down the some of the top 20 or top 30 high school players that are coming out, either in their senior or junior year in high school, because y'all, we got some ballers. We got some straight up ballers for women's basketball in the future.